Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting this evening on Tuesday, 17th of February 2026. It's our first meeting for the year, so welcome back. Thank you to all those who've joined us in the audience here this evening, as well as those online, and also welcome to all our councillors. We've got 11 councillors in the room, as well as one joined online. Councillor Walter, welcome to you also. I'd also like to acknowledge the members of the executive team who've joined me here on my left and right. On the right, I've got Mr. Glenn Patterson, the Chief Executive Officer. To my left, Miss Jen Bednar, Director of Customer and Corporate Services. Next to Mr. Patterson is Catherine Surlis, Director of City Planning and Infrastructure, as well as to her right, Mr. Callum Paddy, Acting Director of Community Life. Also, welcome to all our governance officers and audio-visual team who join us this evening. Thank you. I'll begin now at item 1.1, which is our statement of acknowledgement. The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities, and their rich culture, and pays respect to their elders past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which we work and live. I'll now read the Casey Diversity Statement. The City of Casey is a welcoming and inclusive community. We celebrate all people with their many different stories and experiences. We believe a strong community is built on respect, belonging and shared responsibility for each other. We are committed to ensuring everyone in Casey feels valued, supported and able to fully participate in community life. Moving now to item 2, which is the confirmation of minutes from our previous meeting. So we've got the minutes from the meeting scheduled or held on the 9th of December last year. They've all been circulated and made public. Councillors, is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the December meeting? Councillor Rowe moving. To have a seconder? Councillor Dazon seconding. I'll now put that to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. That's carried. Also, Councillor Walter online. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item 3, which is declaration of interests. I've considered my obligations under Section 130 of the Local Government Act 2020, and I do not have a conflict of interest relevant to the agenda papers. Do my fellow councillors have any conflicts of interest in the agenda they wish to declare? Thank you, councillors. No conflicts to declare. And council officers, are there any conflicts of interest regarding reports presented this evening? No reports. Thank you both. Our next ordinary item is reports, but for this evening, I've spoken with councillors and we're proposing to deal with public questions before reports, noting that a number of the questions do relate to items on the agenda. So we wish to propose a motion to make an adjustment to the order of items on the agenda, to change the standing orders, to bring public questions forward to be heard before we go through the officer reports. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ross. Thank you, councillors. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you, Councillor Dazon. That's carried unanimously. So we will now move to public questions, which has been brought up from later on in the agenda. And on that note, I will now pass over to the CEO, Mr. Glenn Patterson, to take us through public questions for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. The first question is submitted by Gary Page. For planning application PA 240697, the developer in late 2025 had a VCAT appeal right regarding the council's failure to make a decision. PS 5025-0575, lodged 6th of October 2025, stated that additional assessment by council was required. How late can such an amendment be lodged without changing the statutory date for a decision, or does an amendment require additional council assessment, resetting the clock for an appeal to VCAT regarding a council's failure to make a decision? And the Director, City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you. The applicant most recently amended the application on 18 December 2025. This amendment reset council's timeframes to decide the application under the planning legislation. On 15 February 2026, 60 days had passed since this amendment. As a result, the applicant now can apply to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal for review of Council's failure to determine the application.
The next question is submitted by Augustin James about inconsistent number of lanes in Bells Road. Why not 2 lanes on each direction throughout? As per the statement from the Council on their website, Bells Road is declared as an arterial road. This contradicts Victorian Planning Authority glossary of terms. None of the benefits mentioned in the website above is true. Only 1 lane of flow of traffic in each direction is unacceptable. When does the Council plan to add more lanes to ease the flow of traffic? And again, the Director City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. Bells Road is located within the Minter Farm Precinct Structure Plan, which was prepared by the Victorian Planning Authority. Bells Road is identified in the plan as an arterial road. Development contributions funded the acquisition of land for the required width of the road and the construction of a 1-lane road in each direction. The duplication of Bells Road to 2 lanes both ways may be considered by the Victorian Government in the future.
The next question is submitted by Tracy Dorita about overflow car park. Has any topographical and ecological due diligence been undertaken by the City of Casey to confirm soil-bearing capacity and suitability of the site, given that the proposed overflow car parking location becomes waterlogged during winter? Photos available, and would therefore be unable to support vehicle loads on wet terrain, particularly where grass reinforcement mesh is proposed, and is unlikely to withstand repeated traffic loading under saturated conditions. Again, the Director Community Life will respond.
Thank you for your question. A features and levels survey was conducted during the preliminary planning phase. Officers have assessed the site for ecological value and continue to engage with the design team for the optimal design outcomes. Due diligence relevant to the design phase continues to ensure land suitability.
The next question is also submitted from Tracy Dorita about the overflow car park. Was Council aware that Basalt Lake is a decommissioned quarry and has quite unstable rock faces, rock falls regularly to the walking track below? Buffer zones from a decommissioned quarry, as per engineering guidelines for abandoned pits and quarries, recommend a minimum setback of 50 metres to mitigate residual risks and to ensure land use compatibility with decommissioned quarries. Vehicle movement and vibration would disrupt the decommissioned quarry. The Director Community Life will respond.
Council is aware of the historic use of the site. Due diligence relevant to the design phase continues to ensure land suitability. Officers have also been in contact with the resident directly regarding this matter.
The next question is submitted by Frank Dorita about overflow car park. Is Council aware that the 2020 report commissioned by the City of Casey and funded by ratepayers identified an alternative location for the overflow car park, namely the nursery/works depot, which is currently available to accommodate overflow car parking and provides direct access from car park 3? The Director Community Life will respond.
Thanks for the question. Both the existing works depot area and the internal access roadway to the depot is considered unsuitable to accommodate public vehicles and surplus parking.
The next question is submitted by Ben Pilios about open drains. Rats from drains entering our property from open drains. At the open drain junction on council land, where several drains meet near our property, there is significant rat activity. Ours and one neighbouring property are the only homes not covered, and rats are now entering our yards. When will Council inspect this junction and implement appropriate pest control and drainage management measures to address the infestation and to prevent further impact on nearby residents? The Director City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. Council has inspected the drain on several occasions and has undertaken rodent inspections and treatment. A further inspection and treatment have been scheduled. Any covered drain option would require substantial side entry pits to maintain adequate drainage, and as a result, the potential for rodent movement would remain.
The next question is submitted by Bernadette Dixon about the Cranbourne Golf Course redevelopment, cumulative impacts, clause 65, Cranbourne Golf Course redevelopment. Given council has approved a waste transfer station generating 500 plus daily heavy vehicle movements and is now assessing a 1,100 to 1,400 dwellings at the Cranbourne Golf Course site, how has council satisfied its obligation under clause 65 to assess cumulative traffic and amenity impacts of these proximate land uses? Did the original WTS decision consider the known potential redevelopment of the golf course land? And if so, where is this documented? And the City Planning and Infrastructure Director will respond.
Thank you for the question. The planning application for the waste transfer station in Hampton Park and the application for the Cranbourne Golf Course have different planning requirements and have been assessed separately. In assessing the golf course application, the applicant provided a transport impact assessment that confirmed traffic volumes within the surrounding road network are expected to be within capacity following the development of the golf course. Officers also considered a qualitative risk assessment for the Hallam Road landfill and recommend a condition requiring a dust risk assessment for the Resource Co quarry.
The next question is also submitted by Bernadette Dixon about the Cranbourne Golf Course redevelopment, voluntary contribution transparency. Brown Property Group referred to a voluntary financial contribution in relation to the Cranbourne Golf Course redevelopment. Given the planning permit is still under assessment, can council explain whether any contribution has been accepted or agreed in principle? If so, how does council ensure procedural fairness and avoid perceptions of bias during assessment? Is the contribution formally documented and publicly accessible, and what specific infrastructure outcomes would it fund? The Director, City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. A recommended permit condition requires a legal agreement to formalise the proposed voluntary social infrastructure contribution to fund social infrastructure in the local area.
The next question is submitted by Rowan Dixon about the Cranbourne Golf Course redevelopment. In light of the proposed 1,100 to 1,400 dwellings, what formal assessments has council undertaken to determine whether local primary and secondary schools, GP clinics and allied health services have sufficient capacity? If no detailed service capacity assessment has been completed, how can council be satisfied that essential infrastructure will meet future population demand? And the Director, City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. Council officers assess the application against the Casey Planning Scheme and other relevant legislation and have provided a recommendation that outlines a number of permit conditions. Council plays an active role in advocating to state and federal governments for the delivery of important infrastructure such as schools, medical and other services.
The next question is submitted by Rowan Dixon about the Cranbourne Golf Course redevelopment. Glasscox Road has experienced 2 fatalities in the past 2 years. With the proposed golf course redevelopment adding 1,100 to 1,400 dwellings, can council confirm whether an updated road safety audit has been commissioned, specifically addressing known crash history and projected residential traffic increases? If no further safety review has been undertaken, how is current council discharging its responsibility to ensure the road network is safe for future residents? And again, the Director, City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. In considering this planning application, there is no requirement for a road safety audit. The applicant has provided a transport impact assessment that has confirmed traffic volumes on the surrounding road network are expected to be within capacity after the development of the golf course.
The next question is submitted by Anthony Tassone about the Cranbourne Golf Course development. For PA 24-0697 Cranbourne Golf Course, how does council's assessment align with Victoria's golf course redevelopment guidelines on net community benefit, public open space, biodiversity protection and community outcomes, given canopy trees and native vegetation are to be removed? What permit conditions will lock in measurable commitments, open space area, offsets, canopy targets, timeframes, and how will council monitor and enforce them? And the Director, City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. When assessing a planning application, planning officers refer to the Casey Planning Scheme or other relevant state legislation. The golf course guidelines are advisory only, as they are not referenced in the Casey Planning Scheme or the Planning and Environment Act. In determining the application, council must balance planning objectives such as housing targets and tree canopy in favour of net community benefit. Officers have outlined a series of permit conditions that set requirements for public open space and tree canopy targets. The applicant must demonstrate how they will reach the tree canopy targets before each stage of construction and before new lots are created.
The next question is submitted by Raymond Darley about golf course aged care development. Given the natural development and expansion of residential areas in the City of Casey, has there been consideration that the density of both the golf course, proposed housing, and the aged care centre that is currently being built may overwhelm our nearby medical facilities, schools, shopping centres, let alone the roads, particularly South Gippsland Highway at peak times, which is already overwhelmed? And the Director City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. The delivery of new estates involves collaboration between council, the developers, and state and federal governments. As the responsible authority, council assessed the application against the Casey planning scheme. A traffic impact assessment also confirms the surrounding road network is expected to operate within capacity following development of the golf course. Council plays a strong advocacy role with state and federal governments to improve access to essential services such as schools, medical facilities, and investment attraction like shopping centres.
The next question is submitted by Anthony Chisone about the SEM AWP Notice of Motion. Item 4.4 of the Council agenda focuses on the SEM AWP procurement and probity. During procurement, what consideration was given to public health, environmental safety and amenity, emissions, odour, noise, traffic and cumulative impacts, and did it affect any decisions? What genuine community consultation occurred during the procurement, not just updates, and what commitments will Council make to early, transparent engagement before further decisions are made? The Director City Planning Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. Environmental and social impacts were considered carefully during the evaluation process and provide better outcomes than continued disposal to landfill. This project aligns strongly with community expectations to move away from landfill, which have been expressed consistently in the community waste surveys over the past 10 years, and more recently through the Know Your City and deliberative engagement processes. This is further supported by broader community social research undertaken by the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action as part of this project. Participating councils, including the City of Casey, have over many years openly communicated the intent to pursue advanced waste processing.
The next question is submitted by Jason Wood about consultation prior to commitment. Before Council resolved to enter into the SEM AWP consortium and sign the waste supply agreement, what formal community consultation was undertaken, specifically on the decision to commit Casey to a long-term waste supply agreement? Again, the Director City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. Participating councils, including the City of Casey, have for many years clearly and transparently communicated their intention to pursue advanced waste processing. This project strongly aligns with long-standing community expectations to reduce reliance on landfill, which have been consistently expressed through community waste surveys over the past 10 years. These views have been reinforced more recently through the Know Your City and deliberative engagement processes. Further support is provided by the broader community social research undertaken by the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action as part of the project.
The next question is submitted by Jason Wood about public notice and transparency. How were residents notified that Council was considering entering into a 20 to 30-year waste supply agreement, and where was the opportunity provided for community submissions before that decision was made? And again, the Director City Planning Infrastructure will respond.
This project aligns strongly with community expectations to move away from landfill, which have been expressed consistently in community waste surveys. Data provided by DECA have further supported this. The City of Casey is one of 9 participating councils who over many years openly communicated an intent to pursue advanced waste processing. More information is available from the Opal Mary Velco Waste to Energy website. Opal have also set up a Creating Energy from Waste Information Centre at the Morwell Innovation Centre dedicated to the project.
The next question is submitted by Naomi Wood about separation from WTS planning. Given Casey is the only participating council with a proposed waste transfer station at Hampton Park, why was there no community engagement on whether entering the SEM AWP agreement could influence or predetermine local waste infrastructure decisions? And the Director City Planning Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. The issuing of permits and licences for the Hampton Park transfer station is a separate matter which was not influenced by the signing of the SEM AWP agreement. Veolia was shortlisted to the Advanced Waste Processing procurement process prior to owning the proposed transfer station site.
And the next question is also submitted by Naomi Wood about risk disclosure to ratepayers. Was any public-facing summary of financial, contractual or policy risks prepared for ratepayers prior to signing the agreement? If so, where can residents access it? And the Director City Planning and Infrastructure will respond.
Thank you for the question. Risk assessments were conducted as part of the evaluation process, but remain confidential due to strict probity requirements. Risk is considerably reduced as the Maryvale Energy from Waste facility has already achieved social licence to operate. The question of waste transfer remains subject to VCAT processes. This project provides clear financial, social and environmental benefits compared to continued landfill disposal for municipal waste.
Mayor, this concludes the public question time. There was 27 public questions received. There were 10 public questions that were received that were considered to be invalid under the governance rules, and the following submitters have been notified accordingly. Troy Van Gorp, Gary Page, Christine Payne, Viv Payne, Scott Watson, Ruth Daly, Shannon Lynch and Raymond Daly. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Patterson. I will note that some residents were incorrectly notified their questions were invalid, but upon review, some were brought back in and read out this evening, so all valid questions have been answered tonight. Thank you, Mr Patterson and officers. We'll now move to item 4, which is officer reports. We've got 12 officer reports this evening, and we'll get started with 4.1, which is the motions for MAV State Council and ALGA National General Assembly, and we've got Miss Chloe Casey to speak to that item. Thank you, Miss Casey.
Thank you and good evening, councillors. The Municipal Association of Victoria, also known as the MAV, convenes its State Council twice a year, with the next meeting scheduled for the 29th of May 2026. State Council is the MAV's governing body and is made up of delegates from each member council, of which the City of Casey is a member. As part of State Council, the MAV invites delegates to submit notices of motion to the MAV CEO at least 60 days before the meeting. All motions submitted to the MAV must be the subject of a council resolution. The MAV board considers the motion's strategic relevance to the association or significance to the local government or to local government for approval. If approved, the motion is presented at State Council for members to consider and vote on. In this report, officers are recommending that Council endorse motions that will be submitted to both MAV State Council meetings this year. The first motion for consideration at the MAV May State Council being that the MAV calls on the Victorian State Government to consider reforms to reduce impacts of gambling harm with the following steps: limit transfer or introduction of EGMs in disadvantaged areas or areas of unknown disadvantage, provide greater transparency of the State Government Community Support Fund at a municipal level, and require the Victorian Gambling Casino Control Commission to provide greater oversight and regulation of EGM venue community contributions. The second motion for consideration to be submitted at the October MAV State Council being that the MAV requests the Victorian State Government consider rolling out the Green Streets Initiative across Victoria to achieve significant environmental and health benefits and modernise urban development approaches. In addition, the report is also seeking Council's endorsement of a motion to submit to the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly to be held from the 23rd to the 26th of June 2026. The National General Assembly of Local Government is the largest annual gathering of local government leaders in Australia. ALGA invites any council that is a financial member of their state or territory local government association to submit motions that are subject of a council resolution. This report recommends that Council submit the following notice of motion for consideration at the 2026 ALGA National General Assembly, being that the National General Assembly calls on the federal government to have a greater presence in leading discussions with states and territories to deliver planning controls that require early delivery of cellular telecommunications infrastructure in new residential and commercial estates, particularly in Australia's growth areas. Further details on each of the motions being recommended are included in the agenda papers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Casey. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? No questions. Thank you, Ms Casey. All right, we've got a recommendation on the screen. Councillors, do we have a mover and seconder for a motion? Councillor Dazon. Seconder, Councillor Pereira. Any speaking against? Any councillor speaking against? None against. Councillor Dazon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Through you, Mayor, these three motions proposed for submission to the MAV are extremely important. Firstly, on gambling harm. This is a major and growing public health issue. Council's gambling harm minimisation policy demonstrates a strong commitment to prevention through advocacy, planning, leadership, research, and community engagement. However, reform is needed at all levels of government, and hence why this motion, which involves calling on the state government to consider practical reforms to reduce impacts of gambling harm, is important. Secondly, the Green Streets Initiative. It is fantastic to see Casey being nationally recognised for the award-winning Green Streets project in Clyde North, down at Councillor Walters' ward. This involves planting trees more than double the industry standard, delivering environmental and health benefits while modernising urban development. A statewide rollout would be a significant step. Finally, and most importantly for my ward, telecommunications in growth areas. I have been strongly advocating on this issue because mobile black spots in Clyde and Clyde North unfortunately remains an ongoing concern. I have residents who still cannot reliably call 000. This is not just an inconvenience, it is a public safety risk. In fast-growing communities like Casey, telecommunication infrastructure must be delivered early and treated as an essential service just like water and electricity. That is why I strongly support calling on the federal government to take leadership to ensure earlier delivery of cellular telecommunications infrastructure in new estates, particularly in growth areas like Clyde and Clyde North. For these reasons, I'm very pleased to support these motions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dazon. Councillor Pereira, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I just wanted to really highlight the gambling part of it, because Rivergum Ward has had one of the largest losses over the years, and it is a low socioeconomic area, and this is where they actually put these gaming machines, which is really bad. This report highlighted something really shocking to me, that we actually lose more here in Australia to legal gambling per capita than any country in the world. I'm absolutely astounded by that. $544 per adult lost in the city of Casey. For every person that's harmed, they say between 7 and 10 people are also adversely affected. So this is causing great harm in our community. I also wanted greater transparency of the Community Support Fund. For many, many years I've been trying to find out where that money's gone, and I can't actually find the information. So I'm very happy to support this motion. I want greater transparency. I think the community deserves it, and I think the government needs to be aware of how this is negatively impacting us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate, we know gambling is bad for Casey's communities, like it has been highlighted, because I think, we all realise it takes money out of local areas and sends it, to the profit margins of big and multinational corporations. I just want to add that we've seen the Fed government fail us in gambling advertising reform. Recently, we've also seen the state government failing us by delaying and watering down the cap your losses regulations, which would have been a pre-commitment cap on a prepaid card. So the card has been delayed and the requirement for a mandatory cap has been removed. They did give us, and it's been around for a while, a responsible gambling campaign. But, I think that anybody who lives in Casey that has problems like this, they'll know, or they know someone who has problems like this, that it just pushes blame onto people, onto their consumers. It just really suggests that they're flawed individuals and they're responsible for causing their own problem gambling. I want to support the motion. It's a shame that local councils are showing the only leadership in this space. This motion is exactly what Casey needs. We need to push to regulate this harmful industry because I think we can see that it siphons money out of the local economy and, it really even takes money out of the national economy. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Dowling.
Through you, Mayor, I'd also like to point out that gambling harm also involves alcohol a lot and can result in family violence, which is something else we're campaigning to do something about. So it is an important issue that we need to keep working on.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. Any other councillors wish to speak? No? I'll make a contribution. Obviously, there's a lot of support for this. I think these three motions they're good because as a whole, it really highlights our advocacy campaign this year around policy. I think within these motions, there's some really tangible, meaningful change that can occur, and we'll be taking these obviously to the State Council, but also ALGA to push for change. The gambling harm, I think people have spoken to it a lot, but what we're really seeking to do is limit the harm that occurs in our growth areas. We're unique as a growth council where with the capped number of gaming machines in the state, we have the ability to prevent harm in our new areas if we get the legislation right and we get the planning controls right. So I think there's a lot of work that we can do there positively for our community. The Green Streets is a real exciting initiative we've won awards for, has been mentioned, but I think we've got a chance to embed this in developments across the state to have significant improvements in growth areas and tree canopy. It's a really innovative approach, and I think we can take that to other areas. And lastly, we know the challenges around telecommunications in growth areas, and it's about getting the legislative change so that the incentives are right in growth and development areas, that we have the towers in there before the residents come, and we think we've got a strategy for that. So really supportive of this, and I'll be supporting the motion. No further speakers? No? We'll put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item 4.2, which is the 2026 civic event schedule. And we have Julie Stickler on behalf of Emily Clark to introduce this report. Julie.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Item 4.2, the 2026 Civic Events Schedule Report, outlines the proposed schedule of civic events for the forthcoming calendar year. This schedule includes 3 bespoke events delivered within the remit of signature mayoral events. Council delivers a number of community, creative and civic events across the municipality each year as a means of creating moments of community connection, cohesion and celebration. Civic events provide dates of celebration on the annual calendar for councillors, local dignitaries and the Casey community. Such events provide opportunity to highlight important achievements, milestones or programs. Citizenship ceremonies also form a central component of the civic events calendar, with up to 8,000 new Australian citizens welcomed to Casey each year. The calendar of civic events is reviewed annually to ensure that the status of a civic event remains relevant in a changing operational and strategic environment. Annual review of the calendar also allows for the inclusion of one-off events reflecting the interests and values of the current mayor. Mayoral events are subject to change with each mayoral term, enhancing the event calendar by spotlighting different community cohorts year on year. The schedule outlined in this report notes the suite of civic events throughout 2026, along with 3 unique events developed in consultation with the Mayor. These proposed events are the Sports Volunteer Acknowledgement Event to celebrate the contribution of volunteers to grassroots sporting activity, the Honorary Justices Acknowledgement Event to thank local justices of the peace for their service to community life, and the Youth Achievers Celebration Event, recognising the diversity and positive impact of young people within the Casey community. All events are funded through existing operational budget. As summarised, this report outlines the schedule of civic events and provides a recommendation to councillors to adopt the proposed schedule. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Stickler. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? No questions? Councillor Perry.
Would there ever be an opportunity to look at this and have any input in it? I don't remember it coming up at all throughout the year.
Maybe Julie, would you like to speak to that?
Through you, Mayor. The development of the annual civic event schedule is a relatively new process, noting the new term of the selected councillor group. It's something that was developed late December following the election of this mayor and the deputy mayor in consultation with both, and was taken to council briefing last week. Admittedly, it was already fully formed by that point, because with events there's quite a long lead time, so we need to start locking things in as soon as possible to secure particularly busy dignitary calendars and get placeholders in calendars.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any other questions, councillors? No? Councillors, we've got a recommendation on the screen. Do we have a mover and seconder? Councillor Ambrose moving. Any seconder? Councillor Crowther, thank you. Anyone against? Councillor Perry? Thank you. All right, Councillor Ambrose, would you like to speak to the motion?
Through you, Mayor, yes, I would. It's wonderful to see that this has got no cost implications, and we're going to be delivering some needed events for our community members. In particular, I've had the privileges last year through the Deputy Mayor role in attending some of these and actually acknowledging a lot of our Casey residents who play a big role as volunteers into the Justice of the Peace, in particular the business wards. Shout out to Endeavour Hills Boutique Hearing that represented Calora Ward. But in fact, it was just nice to see that we can take the time to acknowledge our volunteers and how important it is to utilise these platforms to give them the time to shine. And I think it's a wonderful achievement that we do deliver at the City of Casey. So I'm in total support of this motion. I also would like to acknowledge the Justice of Peace as well. So there was a few things highlighted with those events, but just awareness and understanding what's needed for our community and some of the gaps that we do have. So if anyone wants to be Justice of Peace, please speak to a local representative, in particular Michael Gonsalves, and you've also got Herbert Ray as well. So they're two individuals I work closely with through Narre North. It's just fantastic to see, and I'm looking forward to attending some of these this year. So, and the Business Awards.
Thank
and
you.
Australia Day too.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Councillor Crowther?
Yes, through you, Mayor, I'd also like to support the motion to endorse the 2026 civic event schedule. As Councillor Ambrose said, it's been developed to highlight, recognise and thank all of our wonderful volunteers. One of the highlights of last year was the recognition event for our amazing aged care volunteers who deliver our meals and provide transport for our community. It was the most lively event of the year, with the volunteers, the councillors and the council officers all hitting the dance floor, and I look forward to Councillor Rose round 2 this year on the dance floor. I'm also pleased to see that the Casey Business Awards are returning again this year. It is a really tough time for local businesses, and the Business Awards are much needed to highlight and showcase our leading local businesses and to help boost our local economy, which is a priority of our councillor group. I did work with Mayor Cooman and the council officers over summer to contribute to the development of the mayoral events, really trying to highlight people who wouldn't normally be highlighted in our recognition program. So that is why we've included the Honorary Justices, a sports volunteer event, and also a Youth Achievers event. So I support this motion and look forward to highlighting our amazing volunteers again.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. Councillor Perry, would you like to speak against the motion?
Yeah, it's not against the motion in its entirety. It's just against, I just don't think we can sign off on all the dates of all the different events just in its current format. Everything else is absolutely perfect with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Ross.
Thank you. I must admit I'm a little bit on the fence with this one. I fully appreciate the Business Awards. They're a fantastic event for our local business community, and I do agree with the dancing, which was awesome. My concern is that when we single out one section of volunteers, there is a chance that a lot of our other volunteer community can feel a little bit left out, and I think we just have to be really careful about how we acknowledge them. I do welcome the youth, once again, every time we do this, it's a bit like this is not a way of deliberately excluding people, but it can feel a bit like that. And I would probably welcome having some input into things and some advance notice, as well as a full list of costings of all these events. They do vary a lot in scale. I attend most of the citizenship awards, and that's in a very different bracket from the KC Leadership Program or any of these other events, and we do block them all in together. So I'm not 100% comfortable with how this has been done. I do support the recommendation in total, though.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to point out the networking opportunities these events have provided many of the volunteers and our Citizens of the Year. I've seen many connections formed to go on and form really helpful charity groups. It's wonderful. And I fully endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll make a... Oh, sorry, Anthony. Councillor Walter, online.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I would just like to say, given my background of doing some event planning myself, I completely appreciate the need to have a forward-thinking schedule and have these dates locked away so we can have enough representation to make it a substantial event. And also, as Councillor Ross, I also go to many of the citizenship ceremonies. I think I've only missed maybe 2 over the entire time we've been elected, and I thoroughly enjoy them. And I believe with the volunteer events, if we do different factions in a rolling way, no one's going to be left out in the end. So year on year, we pick a different section to honor, and everyone will get their time in the sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Any other speakers? Before we go to a vote, I'll make a contribution. Obviously, I've had I'll speak and then we'll go to right of reply. Yep. I will just make a contribution. Obviously, I was involved in shaping the mayoral events. It was a pleasure to work with Michelle around those 3 events, the Deputy Mayor. Obviously, there's a lot of interest across the group, a lot of diverse interest, but I think through the 3 events, we've been able to really focus on volunteers, which has been obviously a focus of our group as we get out into the community as a relatively newly formed council, connecting with different groups. And I think being able to recognise different parts of the community across this year through those 3 events will be a good exercise and a way to re-engage, which has been a focus for us. Many of the other events on the schedule, obviously, some are very historical sitting events that have been around for quite a few years. I think we've all enjoyed the events last year, many of which will be returning, and many of them are also standing events requirements even for citizenship ceremonies, so they are noted also. So I think overall, I think it's a really good schedule. I'm looking forward to it. I think I've been pleased to hear a lot of councillor feedback. We did bring back the business awards after they were going to be shelved, so I think everyone will enjoy that event again this year, and we've had great feedback from our business community. So I'm supportive of the motion. Before we put it to vote, though, we'll have a right of reply. Councillor Ambrose, would you like to speak?
Yes, Mayor, through you, I'd just like to acknowledge the concerns that Councillor Perry did raise, but I just want to reiterate the messaging that I did express at the very beginning, that this is fantastic to see. There's a lot of different varieties of awards through this particular motion, and the Sports Volunteers Acknowledgement event is a new addition. Again, it's amazing to shout out to all the sports individuals in the City of Casey, all your hard work. I am one. I know how much work it does take. You can hear my voice. You'd seem to have to do the impossible with nothing. So keep up the great work, City of Casey residents. We hear you, and we're very proud of everyone that contributes in any way, shape or form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. On that note, we'll put this to a vote. The motion appears on the screen. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Keep your hands raised. Councillor Walter, Councillor Dazon, Councillor Pereira, Councillor Eves, Councillor Crowther, Councillor Cooman, Councillor Ambrose, Councillor Councillor Taylor, not Councillor Perry, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Ross and Councillor Dowling. Please put your hands down, all those against. Councillor Perry, I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move to item 4.3. Thank you, Ms Stickler. Which is the Casey-wide pest management strategy response to notice of motion 3265. And to introduce this report, we have Mr Michael Jansen.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, officers have developed a scope of works for a strategy to implement a coordinated evidence-based action to reduce impacts on biodiversity, agriculture and amenity from 4 priority pest animal species. For Casey, and as identified in their Eastern Regional Pest Animal Strategy, these species are rabbits, foxes, feral cats and common miners. As part of the strategy, we will develop a pest prioritisation framework which will rank other species by risk, feasibility, community impact and cost benefit. And this will allow Council to make management decisions for animal pests that are outside of those 4 priority species. In developing the scope of works, we consulted with various stakeholders, including holding a workshop with state agencies, the Royal Botanic Gardens, neighbouring schools, landholders and residents. Officers have also developed an interim pest rabbit plan, which is operating now in Botanic Ridge, Pearsdale, Tooradin North and Tooradin South, and that'll run till the 30th of June 2026. That can be extended and expanded if we need to, if the full strategy is not done within the 6-month time period. The report that's before you seeks council endorsement for the scope of works and referral of $80,000 to the Q3 budget review to develop the Casey-wide pest animal management strategy.
Thank you, Mr Jansen. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Perry.
Just one, and we had brought this up previously. Just, I know state doesn't consider deer to be a pest animal. Is there any or scope to advocate to have that put on, considered a pest animal, at least in the north of Casey?
Yeah, I guess two responses to that. One is that state do some control of deer in the north. I do know that they have done control works along the Cardinia Creek regional parklands, specifically for deer, but in other areas they have not. So advocacy, yes, will be absolutely a part of our strategy. We see our role as council in advocating and bringing together the stakeholders as a key part to this. And then the second point I'd like to make is that pests framework that will allow us to consider what actions we can take for other species, and that will include deer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Jansen. Any further questions? No further questions. All right, councillors, we have a recommendation on the screen. Do we have a mover and seconder? Councillor Crowther moving, Councillor Dazon seconding. Any councillors speaking against the motion? None against. Councillor Crowther, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I support this motion, and if passed, I will be thrilled that we are moving another step closer in developing a Casey-wide pest control strategy. As Michael Jansen said, we held a Casey pest management workshop last year, which I was proud to officially open and attend. It was a fantastic day sharing knowledge, discussing all the different stakeholders' roles and responsibilities. We reviewed the best practices and discussed how we can best work together and advocate together to address this growing pest issue and help secure funding. Many of the insights from the workshop has been used to shape the scope of works for our pest management strategy. The second part of this motion is the short-term action plan to address the growing rabbit problem in southern Casey, especially, as Michael said, around Botanic Ridge, Junction Village, Pearsdale and Tooradin. I understand residents want to see more immediate action, but what I'm learning in local government is that things do progress slowly, but having this strategy to guide our work is also part of our responsibility and financial responsibility. It is a great step for council to recognise there is even a pest issue and agree that council does have a role to play alongside the other stakeholders, so we are progressing. So I urge my fellow councillors to support this motion so we can move into the next phase of developing our pest management strategy and to start to see more action on the ground to help our community and our environment.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. Councillor Dazon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Through you, Mayor, I would like to once again thank Councillor Crowther for putting together the original notice of motion on this issue last year, and to Mr. Jansen and the officers for the work that's gone into this issue and report. The Casey-wide pest animal management strategy is an important step for Casey. Pests, including rabbits, are having adverse impact on our environment and residents. Reading through this strategy, I understand that it will give us a clear, coordinated framework, setting priorities and, most importantly, guiding action across Casey. I regularly hear concerns from my residents in Turretin about the problems being caused by rabbits down there, as cute as they are. While the full strategy will take up to 6 months from commissioning, I'm pleased that interim measures are being done with the interim rabbit management plan, as mentioned by Mr. Jansen, which is already in place in Southern Casey. Importantly, this plan is strongly supported by community engagement actions. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the residents and stakeholders who contributed to all community engagements and consultations on this issue. On that end, I would be very pleased to support this motion, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dazon. Would any other councillors like to speak to this motion? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to support the scope of this project to include feral cats and common minors. In 2024-25, Council impounded over 1,300 cats and kittens, with only 73 cats reclaimed and no kittens. This reclaimed rate of 4% is consistent across councils. In the same period, Council received 2,767 cat-related requests, and this has been relatively consistent from the year before. So feral cats remain a significant issue in Casey, and many are unregistered, without tags and not microchipped. While we do have a 24-hour cat curfew and have had it for many years, compliance remains a challenge for some owners. It is a persistent, consistent problem, one that is hard to eradicate. So I'm very much pleased that feral cats have been included. Just a note on the rabbits. So there is also lots of rabbits in Wilson Park. If you go there frequently, like I do, you will see them. And they're not just cute bunnies. But I do note that the scope of this means that that will be taken into account in due course as part of this pest management strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Ambrose.
Through you, Mayor, yes, I would. This is something I'm definitely supportive, and like Councillor Dazon said, I support both her and Deputy Mayor Michelle Crowther for bringing this forward to us. It's something the north side of Casey has been seeking for some time as well in regards to the state land, which is Parks Victoria, and I'm glad to see they were part of the community consultation and they contributed to their concerns. In particular, Police Paddocks and Sydney Patches Reserve has had heavily impacts on the facilities there, and I'm hoping that once this does come in full effect, that we can see the strategy developed and then we can see the proper work throughout the whole city of Casey. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Any other speakers? Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this motion and I thank the officers for their well-researched report. On the ABC today, I noticed there were environmental experts predicting a rabbit plague. Clearly, we're ahead of the game. We're already looking for results, and I thank the officers for their report and councillors for bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Pereira.
Just very briefly, I will support the motion, but I have to just say I don't do it happily because we are killing a lot of animals. That's all I've got to say. it's sad, but it's a pragmatic decision that has to be made because we do have a problem. I mean, I've been down to Pearcedale and seen rabbits running around all over the place. It's just ridiculous how many there are, and they do cause damage. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any further speakers? No further speakers. We'll now put this motion to a vote as on the screen. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Passed unanimously. All right, we move now to item 4.4, which is the South East Metropolitan Advanced Waste Processing Response to Notice of Motion 3266. And to introduce that report, we have Mr. Michael Jansen again.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this report responds to Councillor Pereira's notice of motion seeking assurance around the South Eastern Metropolitan Advanced Waste Processing procurement, which resulted in Casey and 8 other councils entering into a long-term waste disposal agreement based on waste to energy at the Maryvale paper plant in the Latrobe Valley. Officers wrote to the South East Metropolitan Advanced Waste Processing Board following that resolution, and the board has responded and provided a detailed written response, which is attached to the report. The response confirms that the procurement was conducted under a strong governance framework with independent probity oversight, state government leadership and clear decision-making roles for participating councils, including the City of Casey. The report also outlines Casey's involvement throughout the process, including the multiple formal briefings and council decisions that occurred over several years. Importantly, the board has reviewed the solution against current state, federal and international policy settings and has advised that the procurement remains sound, appropriate and aligned with those settings. Finally, the board has offered a councillor briefing to provide further transparency and answer any questions councillors may have around the project. The recommendation before council is to note the response and accept the offer for a briefing.
Thank you, Mr. Jansen. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? No questions. Thank you. Councillors, we've got a recommendation on the screen. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Pereira to move and seconder Councillor Walter. I saw online first, Mr. Rowe. Do we have anyone speaking against the motion? No one against. Councillor Pereira, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I will move this recommendation as stated. I'd like to thank the officers for their work, obviously, for proceeding with this. It was good to see some transparency around this because I know the community are very interested in the background and what's happened. So there are some things that are missing, for example, the legal action, which we won't know yet. We can't know the inquiry and things like that. But I'm very pleased that we've got some kind of response about the background, current situation, and I'm very happy about the invitation to go and actually meet with the board. I'm really happy with that offer, so I'd like to thank them for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Councillor Walter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Through you, Mayor, yes. I would just like to formally say I support this motion for the reasons of having the briefing for the councillors to have the added information that some of the residents might be seeking, so we can pass that on to them personally and hopefully put some of this matter to bed.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Any other speakers to the motion? I'll make a brief contribution. I'd just like to thank Councillor Pereira for her her advocacy and strategic work on this. Obviously, we're looking at South East Metropolitan Advanced Waste Processing, which was a binding contract that Council entered into prior to us being elected as councillors, but given its implications, I think it's important that we have a look strategically where that sits, and it's been a good exercise, I think, to write to the collection of councils and find out more and ensure that everything is being done appropriate in accordance with policy changes. I'm also very supportive of receiving a briefing in relation to the project and what role our council plays. So I think it's a good response and something I look look forward to furthering. I will note in the letter that's in the council papers, it has been noted that the Hallam Road landfill is expected to shut mid to late next year, which is obviously news for local residents. So that is one worth noting, but I think I look forward to finding out more when we meet and have a briefing in future. So I'll be supportive of this recommendation. No further speakers. We'll put this to a vote. All those councillors in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. And we'll now move to item 4.5, which is addressing the lack of crisis and affordable housing, response to notice of motion 3267. And we have Ms Courtney Harrison to speak to this report. Ms Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Casey is facing an increase in housing affordability and homelessness pressures due to rising housing costs and limited supply, particularly for low and very low income households. Community feedback indicates that housing affordability is a key priority for residents, reflected in the inclusion of the affordable housing policy as an action in the 25-26 Council Action Plan. While the housing delivery is primarily a state and federal responsibility, Council has an important role to advocate, facilitate and partner to improve local outcomes. This includes advocating for increased government investment and policy reform, supporting affordable housing through planning mechanisms and exploring partnerships with community housing providers. The report also highlights opportunities arising from proposed planning reforms which may enable stronger affordable housing contributions over time. These options will inform the development of Council's new affordable housing policy, providing a clear framework to guide future action and support more inclusive and sustainable outcomes for Casey, with the final policy to be presented for Council for endorsement in June.
Thank you, Ms Harrison. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Perry.
When you say policy reform, are you talking federal policy or state policy?
Through you, Mayor, state.
State. Can we advocate to federal as well?
We can, and we can explore that in the next phase of the policy development.
Great. Should we say what we want now or to go through that later?
I think that's probably in the policy process.
Yeah, cool.
Probably not
Thank you.
in relation to the response to notice of motion. Thank you, Ms Harrison. Any other questions, councillors? No questions. All right, we've got a recommendation on the screen. Do we have a mover and seconder for the motion? Councillor Ross moving. Seconding Councillor Pereira. Sorry, Councillor Rowe. Anyone speaking against? None against. All right. Councillor Ross, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. So there was an affordable housing strategy that Council had that ended in December 2024, and Councillor Pereira's notice of motion is consistent with work Council has commenced in work on creating a new affordable housing policy. Everyone deserves a safe, secure place to live. Currently, the Southern Homelessness Services Network states that there are over 6,800 more homes required in Casey to meet the unmet demand for low-income housing. The number of 1 and 2 bedroom stocks is low, whereas the population of people over 65 are growing, and younger people are finding it almost impossible to enter the housing market. The benefits of an affordable housing policy: it will provide a consistent, updated policy reflecting current community concerns, provides a clearer platform to negotiate for better development outcomes, sends a signal to other organisations and social investors that we are actively encouraging you to commit to working with us in this area, and having a well-developed housing policy will better position Casey to secure support and funding and, yes, advocate to both state and federal government. In noting the response, it is important to ascertain whether the report itself addressed all aspects of the notice of motion. I don't believe it fully addresses all the notice of motion points. For example, it speaks briefly to the international model of housing first, but doesn't touch on any others. However, given the process of an affordable housing policy has already begun, I'm confident that these will become clearer in due course. The process from here is that the affordable housing policy will be put out for public consultation in April, so the community will get to have their say. So therefore, I do move to accept the recommendation to note the response to Notice of Motion 3267 and the development of a new affordable housing policy. I look forward to giving further feedback as a councillor and seeing this fully developed. It's a bit of a wicked problem, affordable housing. It's not going away anytime soon, and it does require all aspects of both government and business and everyone in the community to take this seriously and to help provide accommodation so that we can reduce homelessness, we can deal with crisis accommodation through domestic violence, and, you know, really do this with our hats of sympathy and caring and determination on.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Pereira, would you like to speak to the motion?
I certainly would, thank you. Last time I was on council, I was on the Affordable Housing Task Force, still trying to get some housing done because this problem's been around for a very long time. It was very frustrating. Nothing really got done. So I'm very happy council officers are working on this. I wanted to bring this onto the agenda though because I wanted to highlight it, and I want the community to know that we're actually doing something about this, and I want us to do something about this. I don't want this to just be, you know, just talk. There's a couple of bits in the report. Thank you, officers, for the report. There's, you know, it's a lot of information in there. The partnering is very exciting to me. The council can partner with community housing providers by leasing, donating or selling council-owned land at a reduced cost to support the delivery of affordable housing. This is very exciting to me. I'm looking for innovation, I'm looking for creativity, I'm looking for thinking outside the box. You know, Bunnings recently announced their flat pack homes for $26,000. I don't know what we can do with that, but maybe we can do a bulk buy. The options are all there. So I'm counting on the officers to really help drive this home. I don't want to see, you know, look, the other councils have sort of built small numbers of houses. We're talking about thousands. We need thousands. This is a huge number. We can't just say, oh, we're going to have a small project to deliver 20 new homes. That's not going to do anything. And we're talking about a lot of children, you know, thousands of children that are homeless. We know how that's going to impact their future. So I think this is a problem. It really is a huge problem. I think we need to keep front and centre of everything we're doing. And I want to make sure at the end of our council term, with some really good advocacy, that we actually see some tangible results. I'm counting on you guys, all of you, to help us get this through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Ambrose.
Thank you once again to Councillor Lynette Pereira for bringing this through, and also all the points that both Councillor Kim and her expressed today. I think we've all made us aware that each of us has supported this, and we all want to see something move in the right direction. So a policy is a fantastic framework to see what we can do and what we can support in this situation. Attending last year the event Walk in Her Shoes and listening to the stories that those individuals did express, you know, I had tears in my eyes, and I think this is a fantastic motion in the right direction, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing and being part of it and helping shape it, because I think we do have a responsibility, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Any other speakers? No further speakers. We'll put this to a vote now. Motion's on the screen. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. We will now move to item 4.6, which is S11A, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation, Planning and Environment Act 1987. And to introduce this report, we have Ms Chloe Casey. Ms Casey.
Thank you. The S11A Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation to Planning Officers enables appointed officers to exercise powers referred to within the Planning and Environment Act 1987 as part of their day-to-day duties. S11A instruments of appointment and authorisations are updated throughout the year to reflect departed officers and new officers appointed to exercise powers contained within the Act. In this update of the S11A instrument, under Class A, 3 members of council staff have been removed and 2 members of council staff have been added. Under Class B, 6 members of council staff have been removed and 9 members of council staff have been added. All changes can be viewed in the marked up attachment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Casey. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? No questions. Thank you, Ms Casey. We've now got a recommendation on the screen. Councillors, do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Eves moving, seconder Councillor Pereira. Anyone speaking against? None against. Councillor Eves, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This is very administrative in its nature. All large and medium-sized businesses have delegations. They're needed to work efficiently. These delegations relate to individual officers rather than the positions they hold, and have resulted, as mentioned, from staff losses and staff gains. I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eves. Councillor Pereira, would you wish to speak?
It's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty routine and administrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Anyone else like to speak to the motion, councillors? No further speakers. We'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Passed. Read it out? Yeah, we'll just read it out, noting Councillor Perry has vacated the room briefly. Councillor Dazon, Councillor Pereira, Councillor Eves, Councillor Crowther, Councillor Cooman, Councillor Walter, Councillor Ambros, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Ross, Councillor Dowling. That's 11 in favour, and Councillor Perry will be noted as abstaining, as not in the room. Thank you, councillors. That's passed unanimously. Oh, not unanimously. That's passed with a majority. Thank you. We will now move to item 4.7, which is planning permit application number PA240697, which is for 750S Glasscox Road, Cranbourne North, otherwise known as Cranbourne Golf Course. And to introduce that report, we have Mr. Michael Ford. Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. This report recommends a council decision on an application for a planning permit for the development of the northern part of the Cranbourne Golf Course. The proposal is for 499 new dwelling lots and related development in a high amenity neighbourhood of tree-lined streets, public open space that retains significant native vegetation and wetlands. In deciding the application, council, as the responsible authority for the application, must balance conflicting objectives in favour of net community benefit. The site is one of the few strategic locations in Casey's established areas that can deliver a significant number of new homes towards council's established area dwelling target of 28,500 dwellings by 2051. The proposal is consistent with the general residential zone and has no overlays that constrain potential development. Officers and state agencies have independently peer-reviewed technical assessments and are satisfied that potential amenity, environmental and traffic impacts are manageable or can be managed via conditions of a permit. The applicant has proposed additional public benefits beyond what the planning scheme requires, including the implementation of Greening Casey policy targets. For these reasons, the proposal balances the relevant policies of the planning scheme to deliver a clear net community benefit outcome, and officers recommend that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Crowther.
Through you, Mayor, the Greening Casey document highlights the case study of the Amstel Golf Club redevelopment and reports a 61% canopy loss over 3 years. And the Greening Casey report says it will take over 50 years to replace the amount of tree canopy that was lost. What changes in this process have been implemented to this proposal to ensure this doesn't happen with this golf course redevelopment?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Crowther's question. A couple of things I'd like to add. Firstly, the Amstel development preceded new policy at state level and also council's Greening Casey policy. So that's the first point of difference. To that new policy coming in, the application and the recommended permit conditions focus not just on tree retention, which was the focus of Amstel, but also embracing those policy targets, both at the state level in the state policy and the planning scheme, as well as Greening Casey. I think to a second part of the councillor's question through you, Mayor, is I think councillors also have the opportunity to monitor and ongoing enforce these policy targets through conditions of the permit.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, any other questions for the officer? Councillor Ambrose.
Through you, Mayor, yes, I would. I would just like to know what are the clear access widths in regards to the emergency vehicles, and does it comply with CFA guidelines? And in particular, how will the emergency vehicles access the site?
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor's question, two separate individuals, both council's traffic engineers as well as the CFA, have assessed all the road sections and are satisfied that the widths of those roads, as well as those roads where cars are parked on the shoulders, can accommodate throughput of emergency vehicles.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Perry.
Through you, just a pretty easy one, just for the people at home. What is the mandated minimum block size, like the state mandated minimum block size through those new regulations?
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor's question, I'm not aware of any minimum. We do see increasingly smaller product, particularly in the growth areas, an attempt to respond to affordability. Coming down to as small as 100 square metres, but that's a response to the market, and also should be taken with the fact that they're more vertical, so 2 stories on a lot size that small to allow adequate living areas for the residents.
And what is the minimum block size in this development?
Through you, Mayor, to this site, the site is located in the general residential zone, but there is no specified minimum lot size.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Pereira.
Just a really quick question. I was talking to you earlier, Mr Mayor, but I didn't get an answer. Could you please clarify the DRC letter? It states 750T Glasscoss Road. Is this another parcel of land or is that a typo?
Through you, Mayor, the site has had some subdivision occur since the original lodgement of the application, which means that the site descriptions have changed given the passage of time, noting this application was lodged in December 2024.
Councillor Pereira?
No, sorry, I don't understand those 750T. Is that actually a parcel of land or is it meant to be 750S in that letter? I just don't know if it's a typo or not. I don't know what the T part is.
Mr Ford?
Through you, Mayor, I think the 750T would have been a previous parcel, but the subdivision of land and the passage of time means that the site descriptions have changed. We're talking about 750S here, and the site description, in any event, doesn't change the findings of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Ambrose.
Through you, Mayor, are you able to provide a bit of context and explanation of how waste trucks will access their bins, in particular with the 4th bin addition, that if that does occur, and how will that be conducted through this site plan?
Through you, Mayor, in simple terms, the application comprises 2 separate aspects of development. Firstly, a subdivision component of vacant lots. So those lots, given their size, are expected to manage waste on site. There is also the second part of the application of 121 odd dwellings on lots under 300 square metres, and there is a requirement in the recommended permit conditions for a waste management plan that will manage the different bins and these concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Pereira.
Sorry, I should know this, but I just want to make sure. How many parcels of land or lots are there on that site, please? The total number of the whole of the golf course site?
Mayor, I'd just like to ask clarification, is that the whole golf course site or the site subject to this application?
Councillor Pereira.
The whole golf course site, please.
Thank you, Mr Ford.
There are 4 parcels in total.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any further questions? Councillor Pereira.
Sorry to be a pain. I just want to get this clear in my head. There's 4 parcels, so one in the south. The one in the north, is that one parcel plus the 2 subdivisions of that parcel?
Through you, Mayor, this particular application relates to 1 parcel only. The balance parcels are located in the south.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillor Pereira. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Pereira.
Sorry, so trying to work out where that 61S Huon Road is. Is that that's adjacent in the north or part of it in the north?
Huon Park, through you, Mayor, Huon Park Road parcel is in the southwest.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any further questions, councillors? I do have a question, Mr Ford. Just in light of the earlier report noting that the landfill is scheduled to close, the Hallam Road landfill is scheduled to close middle of next year, I suspect that may be prior to houses being built, should this be approved. My question is, given the potential for a waste transfer station currently before VCAT with the EPA, as we're aware, has there been consideration around buffers and the potential impacts of a waste transfer station, should that be approved and go ahead?
Thank you, Mayor. On that particular item, we'll just start with some context. So the the landfill requires a 1,500 metre human health and amenity impact buffer, which intersects with the northwestern part of this particular site. That recognises that landfills have greater impacts than waste transfer stations. The EPA has recommended buffer distances for a waste transfer station of up to 500 metres. So that impact is going to be much smaller than an active working landfill.
Thank you, Mr Ford. So I don't have the figures in front of me, that buffer, would 500 metres be within the site of the proposed development?
No.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Pereira.
Sorry, thank you for that question, Mr Mayor. Just on that same note, can you just explain with respect to the traffic implications, should that go ahead, where is our responsibility with that when the extra traffic, if it comes through and the roads are congested, where does our responsibility lie, please?
Through you, Mayor. The traffic impact assessment does apply an assumption of a rate of growth of traffic year on year over the 10-year life of the plan. So there, in the traffic impact assessment, I'll just call out the aspect where there's a 1.5% growth year on year, and that's compounding over the 10-year analysis period of the traffic impact assessment. So that assumed growth is to cover any further development in the neighbourhood. And wrapping up the conclusions of that report, again, after considering that growth over 10 years, the modelling tells us that's the roads will continue to operate in an acceptable standard.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillor Pereira.
Sorry, can you please confirm, did that include the potential truck numbers from this proposed waste transfer station?
Through you, Mayor, the analysis underpinning that assumed growth rate wasn't granular and went to particular permits, but it is conservative enough to cover that growth regardless of the circumstances.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, any further questions? No further questions. Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, we have a recommendation noted in the papers, but also on the screen in part, but it is quite a long one, obviously. We're all familiar with it at this point. Do we have a mover and seconder for the recommendation as put on the screen? Councillor Ross.
I'd like to move the motion with an amendment. Through you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. So, proposed amendment. Would you like to explain your proposed amendment?
My amendment concerns the social infrastructure voluntary levy, which requires the council to expend the social infrastructure contribution in the suburbs surrounding the proposed development.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll just check, officers, do we have that to put on the screen? You might just get that up on the screen now for councillors. Do you have is there a seconder for Councillor Ross's amendment? Councillor Dizon. Thank you. That's now on the screen. I'll give councillors... It's not on the screen? I think we need section 24. I've just been advised. There we go. So we have a mover and a seconder. So councillors, just from governance in terms of how the process works, so this is a request for an amendment to be added to the recommendation, officer recommendation on the screen. So we'll vote now with a mover and seconder to add this amendment to the standing recommendation. So this is not a vote for the whole of the recommendation, it's just to add this to the existing recommendation. So on that basis, I'll now ask for a vote to add this amendment to the standing recommendation. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. That's passed unanimously to add this amendment to the existing recommendation. So now we have a new substantive motion, as on the screen, which is the existing recommendation plus the amendment added by Councillor Ross. So on that basis, we now can move into debate with the substantive motion, subject to there being no further amendments. Councillor Taylor, do you have
I'd like to propose a further amendment.
Okay, Councillor Taylor, can you please outline your amendment, and then we'll see if we'll see if officers have that suggested amendment. Yeah, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yep. So this amendment is to ensure compliance with the canopy tree cover targets of the permit.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We'll just wait to get that on the screen so that... Yeah, so that is now on the screen. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Perry. Noting obviously Councillor Taylor has outlined the amendment, but does anyone have any questions in relation to the amendment before we put it to a vote? Not in relation to the substantive motion, but just in relation to what's being proposed to be included to the substantive motion as it stands on the screen. Councillor Taylor's obviously outlined what it relates to, and he's had that drafted up by officers as an amendment. Noting no questions and a seconder, we'll now put that to a vote to add the additional amendment to the substantive motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. That's unanimously passed to add that second amendment to the substantive motion. So we're now at the original recommendation plus the added amendment from Councillor Ross around the social levy spend, and then the additional amendment from Councillor Taylor in relation to tree canopy. And on that basis, are there any further amendments actually? Councillor Dowling, you have an additional amendment. Has this one been raised with officers? Do we have a... We'll bring that up on the screen. So section 10. Councillor Dowling, would you like to explain the nature of your amendment?
Yes, I'd like to propose an amendment on the conditions. So the condition should require a tree management and protection plan before each stage of the development. This amendment inserts new conditions, 10A4, to require that the tree protection plans also show any additional trees that can be retained within road reserves and public open spaces.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. So we have that on the screen. Councillors, are there any questions for Councillor Dowling in relation to the amendment before we go to a vote to include this amendment into the substantive motion? Councillor Pereira?
Just simply want to know what the officers thought. Would this cause any issues at all? The amendment? I just want to know if the officers, if it would cause any other issues.
So
at
for
all?
context for those in the audience, councillors have raised concerns or additional conditions they wish to include with the proposed recommendations. That has then been discussed with officers to ensure it complies with planning code, and these have been drafted. So Councillor Perez asked, in terms of the drafted, are there any concerns in relation to the proposed amendment from Councillor Dowling?
Thank you, Mayor. The answer is no. Any additional trees that happen to be able to be saved beyond the initial assessment done is a good outcome in officers' view.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Question, Councillor Ambrose?
Through you, Mayor, no question, but I'd like to second Councillor Dowling's
Thank you,
recommend.
Councillor Ambrose. Any further questions before we move to a seconder? We have Councillor Ambrose seconding. No further questions. We'll now put to a vote the inclusion of this amendment to add to the other two amendments and the additional recommendation. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. That is carried. So we now have the standing recommendation plus the three amendments as noted on the screen in relation to tree protection, the social levy spend and Councillor Taylor's tree canopy amendment. On that basis, any further amendments? No further amendments. Thank you, councillors. So we now have a substantive motion, and we have the original mover is Councillor Ross, and original seconder was Councillor Dazon. So Councillor Ross, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. In making decisions, councillors are tasked with making the best one for the community within the current legal and planning framework. When informed of the planning permit for the redevelopment of Cranbourne Golf Course, my two immediate questions were, how much tree canopy were we going to lose, subsequent impact on urban heat, and how can we maximise livability for existing residents and those who make the new development their home? There are concerns and challenges, including concerns about increased traffic. Casey residents are sick of being caught in roadwork delays and peak hour congestion. There will be an increased demand on local infrastructure, including schools, sporting recreation facilities and maternal health. There is a lag in connectivity of bus services. There will be a reduction in greenery, which will increase our urban heat problems and potential impact on local fauna. And there are unknown and wellbeing impact of proximity to the waste transfer station. I know impacts on residents. But the facts are really, really important here. First, the zoning. This land has been zoned residential for over 25 years. It's privately owned, it's been sold to a property developer, it will be used for housing. There are no requirements to include affordable or social housing. The developers have met all legal criteria they need to, and they've negotiated, I believe, in good faith with our council officers to try and achieve maximum impact. The state government has a housing target in established areas for KC of 28,500 homes over the next 30 years. This redevelopment is a key part of us meeting that target. If we do not meet the target, the state government has the power and the will to come in and impose their own way of meeting it. The 499 dwelling lots goes a long way to helping with this target. The size of some of the blocks may sit uncomfortably for some, but this is a no judgment zone. They provide an affordable housing option for many in the community and add to a much wanted diversity of stock. It's in this space that good design makes a considerable difference to the livability regardless of how small or big the block is. Mayor, I'm going to flag for an extension on my time, please. Over the course of this time, I've advocated, as all us councillors have for our residents in a number of ways, including calling this decision in so that it comes before council, increasing transparency and providing opportunities for residents to be heard. I've attended all developer meetings and community consultations, had site tours of current redevelopment site and previous golf course redevelopment site. We've provided feedback to council officers and asked for increased negotiation in the area of environment and amenity. We've asked for the banning of artificial turf to reduce loss and help urban heat. We've asked for an audit of surrounding community resources to establish their capacity for additional development without additional community facilities that might normally be associated with development of this size in growth areas. Requested additional community consultation time and a second community consultation meeting. Requested that a voluntary levy be localised and not placed in other areas of Casey, and that Green Street programs be integrated into parts of the estate. We have achieved advocacy actions including light non-reflective roofs, disallowing fake grass and more. So, sorry, finding my page. We have ensured that the development will meet Council's Green in Casey canopy cover targets, 30% canopy cover in streets and public open spaces and 20% canopy cover across the site. Yes, this is a reduction of what is there. However, I go back to the facts. What next? I will continue to advocate to state government for improved bus services, safer connection with local roads, appropriate school provisions, and to the council to identify areas in the surrounding neighbourhood where more intense tree planting and urban heat cover could be implemented, to address pedestrian connectivity with local amenities and to monitor the use and capacity of local amenities. I call for my councillors to support the officer recommendations. We all have our concerns, but we go back to the facts, we go back to what is necessary for our community, and we work hard to continue to achieve the best possible outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Dazon, would you like to speak to the motion as seconder?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ross, and thank you, Mayor, through you. I want to begin by acknowledging the community's concerns on this issue, which Councillor Ross has mentioned earlier. However, as mentioned by her, it is important to consider all the relevant facts we have for this application, which she has highlighted in detail. In this chamber, we must act, or we have a legal obligation to act as the responsible authority under the Planning and Environment Act. That means that we are legally required to balance conflicting objectives, as mentioned earlier by the officer, and determine whether the application delivers a net community benefit and supports sustainable development for present and future generations. We have been advised that the conditions before us go well beyond what the developer has originally proposed. I think this is very important. A few net community benefits stood out to me, including the ones mentioned by Councillor Ross. One of them that I'd like to highlight is a voluntary financial contribution towards social infrastructure, which will support essential facilities and services. And I thank Councillor Ross for the amendment ensuring those funds are expended to the surrounding suburbs, so local residents benefit most directly. And second, perhaps, is the requirement to meet our greening Casey canopy targets with 30% canopy cover in streets and public open space and 20% across the site. This is a strong environmental outcome, and Councillor Taylor's amendment will help ensure this happens. On balance, as much as I understand the concerns with this application, I am satisfied that this delivers a net community benefit, and I will be supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dazon. Are there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion and the noted amendments? If not, we'll now move to open debate. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank all the residents that did put in submissions to this, because it is a really, really important, large application, very complex, and I do thank them for taking the time. I have to mention Gary Page, my long-time resident. He's always put in great effort and highlighted, information that's important for us to know. I think this is a very difficult situation for us because obviously we know there's angst in the community about it, but we do have to act as a responsible authority, and we are limited and restricted in how we have to approach this type of thing. We have to follow our guidelines. I want to speak quickly about the things like the buffer zone and the odour and gas and traffic environmental assessments. Obviously, people are worried about that. I've asked lots of questions of the officers. The technical officers have independently peer reviewed these assessments. They support the reduced buffer distance. They think that's warranted down to 1 kilometre. They also have independently peer reviewed the cited assessments, environmental assessments. There's a dust risk assessment that's going to be required for the former Resource Co quarry located at 605 Glasscox Road in condition 6. You'll see it there. This was mentioned during question time. I asked about the GED, the General Environmental Duty that we need to look at. Council officers are satisfied, and I'm satisfied with their responses, on balance. Council officers are satisfied that all relevant off-site impacts and any potential on-site contamination will be appropriately addressed prior to the commencement of development. May I please have the extended time?
Granted. Thank you, Councillor Pereira.
It will be appropriately addressed prior to the commencement of any development. The agent of change, I asked about that. The relevant buffer distances are designed to ensure the agent of change does not cause reverse amenity impacts. The council officers consider the application of buffer guidelines appropriately address the potential for agent of change conflicts. I want to talk about the Cultural Heritage Management Plan. So when a planning permit is granted, it applies only to the land described in the permit. In this case, it's 750S Glasscox Road, one of the parcels of the golf course site. The permit does not authorise works outside of that land. So while council can issue a planning permit for 750 Glasscox Road, a Cultural Heritage Management Plan will be required for high-impact works on the 61S Yuan Park Road title under the Integrated Water Management Plan, probably the Stormwater Management Plan, and other things they have to do there. Council must be satisfied that an approved CHMP is in place for this land before a planning permit can be issued for that site. And lastly, I want to talk about the PRSA, the Preliminary Risk Screening Assessment. This is conditioned and is to assess, with the recommendations, the condition is to assess and manage potential land contamination risks associated with the proposal, to determine whether contamination risks are present on the site, how they should be managed, and whether the land is suitable for the proposed use prior to sensitive uses commencing. The proposed conditions require that any relevant amenity impacts are addressed prior to the commencement of development works. If these matters are not appropriately resolved, the development cannot proceed. And just finally, I just wanted to make mention, the final Hampton Park Hill plan, the final scenario, that section of the land where the quarry is now, that's going to be rehabilitated and it will become employment land. There's also a small area of local open space there, and then when the landfill is finally remediated, that also will be public passive open space. So long-term scenario planning, I'm hoping we won't need to have the landfills as an issue, and the community will benefit from living in a nice area close to amenities and close to nice passive open space. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Crowther, then Councillor Dowling.
Through you, Mayor, I would also like to give voice for the community, the environment and the livability of our future residents in regards to this planning permit application. Firstly, I welcome the amendment from Councillors Taylor and Councillor Dowling to strengthen the tree canopy protection processes, plus enhance monitoring enforcement of tree replanting guidelines throughout and beyond construction. Secondly, the delegate report states that the retention of 55 canopy trees would conflict with the ability to develop the land with dwellings to meet housing needs. This issue has weighed heavily on my mind. Is this where we're headed? Housing at all costs. As you can see later in our agenda, we're investing further ratepayer money into Green and Casey to correct planning errors of the past. Poor tree canopy makes the area hotter, as Councillor Ross described before, more expensive to cool, and I feel it often disproportionately impacts our lower income residents who are living in these higher density areas. It's often our most vulnerable community members who are paying the price of these planning choices. Earlier in the public questions, we heard that the 20% open space guidelines on golf course development are not being applied at this site. Instead, the Casey Planning Scheme requirement of 8% open space applies, and this application does exceed that. But beyond this application, perhaps we should be having a conversation about, are these minimum standards in the planning scheme adequate to protect our future residents' quality of life and the impacts on their physical and mental health? Lastly, the proposal includes 121 dwellings under 300 square metres, and some of them, could I please get an extension?
Granted, Councillor Crowther.
Lastly, the proposal includes 121 dwellings under 300 metres squared and some as small as 117 metres squared. The planning scheme guidelines recommend these higher density houses be located within 400 metres of activity centres, and as the officer's report states, this proposal is 800 metres from the nearest activity centre. Currently, it is only a proposed bus route, so not an actual bus route. So the people living in these high density houses will be relying on cars. As Councillor Ross says, we will need to advocate for bus routes in the area. So, as others have spoken to, it is a challenge. This proposal does meet the minimum standards in the Casey Planning Scheme, and this is the framework we must make our decision. But perhaps outside this application, we really need to have a conversation about what our community wants for the future, and are we protecting the future residents' quality of life whilst balancing our state imposed housing targets at the same time.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Dowling, you were next. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank all the departments in the council that got involved in pulling this together. As Councillor Crowther mentioned, for that size area, we only need to supply, or the developer only needs to supply 8% of the total area in open space. This developer is supplying 17.4% of the site area, so that's 12 hectares of open space, and we've negotiated a further 1.54 hectares, which is about 3/4 the size of the MCG, to give you an idea. So the open space far exceeds what has been mandated earlier at 8%, and it'll be welcomed, I'm sure, by the community that eventually lives there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Ambrose.
Through you, Mayor, I would, having highlighted the consultation with the CFA and the concerns in regards to emergency service vehicles on the site that has been up for discussion today, having our planning authority hat on, I would like to also acknowledge the residents who provided their questions today through question time and also the consultation. And I think it was great to see what their concerns were, and we were able to listen to it. But the concerns that were addressed today and the questions asked today, I am comfortable with what was provided, and also with in regards to the traffic concerns, also the waste collection and making sure there is arrangement. So I thank the officers for doing that work and also making sure that's all included underneath the planning scheme too, planning application.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Any other councillors? Councillor Perry.
Just a quick one through you, Mayor. Yeah, as you can hear, probably this motion is hard to support. Unfortunately, what we've come to understand is our planning system now more than ever takes decisions away from locals who feel they know their area best. Like there's a push to build through what's been framed as a housing crisis in Victoria and Australia. So they've taken away as much power as possible that gave locals a say on what's appropriate in their communities. And yeah, so state is saying we must build more homes. Fair enough, we are. I think council is wholesale approving new open field developments all the time within their delegated powers. And yeah, as part of state's new planning rules, from what you said earlier, Michael, states block size has drastically been reduced. We're hearing this development has developed, a block size big enough for a canopy tree in each. I guess that's the best we can hope for. It feels like all we can do is try to protect green space in this development. So, yeah, I don't know where else we could go with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any other councillors wish to speak? No. Oh, Councillor Dowling.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that the 2 trees per lot only applies to lots that are under 300 square metres.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. No further speakers. I will make a contribution. I'd like to thank councillors for their contributions. I think a lot of it has been covered off, but I think at a broader level, I think it's really important that we have called this in. It's a very significant decision. And I think through all the work, the meetings, the many briefings and discussions we've had, we've actually achieved some significant improvements in conditions, noting the limitations that we are under as this is already zoned residential. And I think that's been the biggest, I've spoken to a lot of residents about this, and I think that's been the biggest misconception and challenge we've had to face, is that this is not a rezoning where you can negotiate and include very significant changes such as 20% open space as a minimum requirement. We were working within the planning scheme at 8% because this is essentially a planning permit under our scheme. So to be able to secure that very high level of open space, noting some of it is encumbered, but 12.4% of genuine open green space is significant, along with all the shared user paths, playgrounds, and in mini forests along that little track there. I think it will be a livable and nice space to live, and we've got the best outcome we can. Given the circumstances, I'd certainly concur with Councillor Crowther that there's work to be done. I do have concerns that this space was rezoned. It was 25 years ago, but there was no overlay or requirements on it. But what we're dealing with today is a decision on our planning scheme, and I think this is the best possible outcome. The tree canopy targets have been embedded in the permit. That was really important change. These will be delivered and they are significant. They meet our green encasing strategy, which has been a big focus of this council, and they go well beyond existing estates that we see when we do drive around and there's no trees. You're looking at between 5 and 11% canopy in some of the long-standing developments, and to have a pathway to 30% open space tree canopy is really good. So I'm really pleased with what we've achieved there. The only other point that maybe hasn't been touched on is the Cultural Heritage Management Plan. I had a number of residents raise that with me, concerns about that. Just to reiterate, this only deals with the northern parcel, so it's half the block of the golf course. And there has been an assessment and there's no management plan required. So I'm comfortable on that basis, along with the other things I've mentioned in supporting this motion, particularly with the added amendments. I thank councillors for the work they've done to add in those certainties around some really key issues that have been concerns for us. So I'll be supporting the motion. Any further speakers? Councillor Ross, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to add some things, and I thank my fellow councillors for everything they've contributed to both leading up to this meeting and during the meeting itself. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is, so the planning decision-making framework we must follow means that we can only deliver the best and most sustainable communities with the help of developers. This is basically a call to the development industry to embrace practical measures like lighter coloured roofing, greener streets with more trees, and reducing hard surfaces to significantly cut heat, improve comfort and boost overall livability, to embrace innovation and make greener, cooler and more resilient neighbourhoods. It's a partnership. We only achieved these results because both the council officers and the developer came together in good faith for these negotiations. At council, we welcome innovative builders and developers who truly have sustainability at their heart. And that's the message I really want to leave us with tonight.
Thank you, councillors. With no further speakers, I'll put to a vote the amend the motion on the screen, which is the original recommendation plus the 3 amendments that have been added to the recommendation as it now stands. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. The motion with amendments is passed unanimously. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 4.8, which is proposed disposal of laneway behind Arroyo Grove and Bellardo Road in Clyde, and we will go back to Mr Michael Ford to introduce this report. Mr Ford.
Thank you, Mayor. This report seeks a council resolution to commence community engagement on a proposal to dispose of an unnamed laneway located between Arroyo Grove and Bellardo Road in the Clyde Township. Council has previously discontinued the road. Given the dimensions of the land and the fact that the land's encumbered by a number of service easements, officers recommend disposal of the land, given that council has no future service use for the land. Importantly, for the benefit of councillors, this report is the first step of a 2-step process for the disposal of the land. If carried tonight and following community consultation, a further report on the outcome of community engagement and the recommended next steps on the proposed disposal will be tabled at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, any questions? No questions. Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, we have a recommendation on the screen as noted by Mr Ford. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dazon moving, Councillor Ambrose seconding. Any speaking against? None against. Councillor Dazon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Just very quickly, through you, Mayor. Having reviewed the report and during my conversations with council officers, I understand that this discontinued laneway in my ward is encumbered by drainage and sewer easements. Because of these constraints, I understand that this site is unlikely to serve a future council purpose. In that context, I consider it appropriate to commence statutory procedures for its disposal, noting that the process includes community consultation and giving nearby residents the opportunity to have their say. Importantly, any funds raised could potentially support future strategic municipal land acquisition that better meet community needs. For these reasons, I will be supporting this motion tonight. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dazon. Seconder, Councillor Ambrose, would you like to speak?
Yes, through you, Mayor Wood. Community consultation is key. I think we've emphasised this a lot through this particular chamber with us councillors. So I welcome the fact that we are giving the residents an opportunity to provide their feedback before any land disposal. In particular, I would like to also highlight that it builds transparency and the trust in the process for them to provide their input and also address anything that needs awareness or we should be informed. So I am looking forward to the next steps and part of the community consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Dazon, right of reply? Waived. Thank you. All right, councillors, we'll put that to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Please keep them raised, noting Councillor Ross is absent. Councillor Dazon in favour, Councillor Pereira, Councillor Eves, Councillor Crowther, Councillor Cooman, Councillor Walter, Councillor Perry, Councillor Ambrose, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Rowe and Councillor Dazon. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Ross absent from the vote. Declare that vote and that motion carried. Thank you. We will now move through to item 4.9, which is proposed disposal of land between 131 and 133 Sladen Street, Cranbourne. And Mr Ford can introduce that report. Mr Ford.
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to the previous report, this report seeks a council resolution to commence community engagement on a proposal to dispose of land located between 131 and 133 Sladen Street, Cranbourne. Officers have now completed the statutory process to discontinue the carriageway easement that was previously resolved by Council in October 2025. The carriageway land is surplus to Council's operational requirements. This report is the first step of a 2-step process for the disposal of the land, and if carried tonight and following community engagement, a further report on the outcome of community engagement and the recommended next steps on the disposal will be tabled for councillors at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Ford. Councillors, any questions for Mr Ford? No questions. Councillors, we have a motion or a recommendation on the screen. Do we have a motion, a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rowe moving. Councillor Eve seconding. Anyone speaking against? No councillors against. Thank you. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
Very quickly.
Councillor Rowe, your microphone. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm used to using my voice. This is a requirement of council to dispose of this land. It is no longer of any use in other directions, and I'm sure whoever gets their hands on it will enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Eves, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This land is actually in my ward, Quarters Ward. It is a small piece of land. It is 5.79 metres wide and 42.67 metres long. For all intensive purposes, it's a driveway to nowhere. Now we are disposing of it. It is not going to harm any of my residents' amenities. Getting rid of it, I fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eves. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No further speakers. On that note, we'll put this to a vote. All those in favour of the motion on the screen, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. That's carried unanimously. Oh, sorry. Noting Councillor Dowling's, we've had a couple of absentees of late. Noting Councillor Dowling's absence, please keep your hands raised if you're voting in favour. Councillor Dazon, Councillor Pereira, Councillor Eves, Councillor Crowther, Councillor Cooman, Councillor Walter, Councillor Perry, Councillor Ambrose, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Ross. Thank you, councillors. Absent Councillor Dowling. I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to item 4.10, contract number C000963, Clyde Northwest Family and Community Centre. And to introduce the report, we have Ms Jo Tyson. Ms Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. And the purpose of this report is to formally present the tenders received relating to contract number CT000963 for Clyde Northwest Family and Community Centre, describe the evaluation process undertaken and seek approval to award the contract. As noted, all evaluation findings and the recommended tender price are included in the confidential attachment to this report. The Clyde Northwest Family and Community Centre, to be located at 76 Springleaf Avenue, is a purpose-built facility designed to deliver key council services, including kindergarten, maternal and child health, flexible community spaces supporting a broad range of programs. This centre will act as a lifelong community hub, supporting health and wellbeing, strengthening social connection and fostering a sense of belonging for residents across all ages. This aligns strongly with the council plan priorities on community connection, improved livability and city-shaping infrastructure. A tender process was released on 18 November 2025, closing on 18 December 2025. A total of 9 submissions were received. 1 was deemed non-conforming and excluded. The remaining 8 were evaluated in full. The evaluation panel comprised of senior officers from City Design and Construction who assessed all conforming tenders against the established evaluation criteria, including experience, capacity, management systems and value for money. All panel members completed conflict of interest declarations and no conflicts were identified. Following the assessment, several tenders were found capable. However, one submission clearly provided the best value outcome for council based on capability, quality and price reflective of current market conditions. The recommended tender price is within the allocated project budget. Accordingly, the report recommends that Council award the tender to Melbcon Proprietary Limited for the price outlined in the confidential attachment. This recommendation is consistent with the documented procurement plan and evaluation outcomes. Councillors, this contract represents a major step forward in delivering essential early years and community infrastructure to the Clyde North community. The recommendation presented today will allow for construction to proceed and support the timely delivery of this much-needed facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Tyson. Councillors, any questions for the officer? Councillor Walter.
Through you, Mayor. I would just like the officer to let the public know how the proposed developer plans to do energy efficiency within the building.
Okay, just a moment. Through you, Mayor. The building is required to be Green Star, 5-star Green Star certified as outlined in our environmental sustainability design guidelines, and this is because the building area is 1,200 square metres. In relation to the actual design around that, I would need to take the remainder of the question on notice.
Thank you, Ms Tyson. Thank you, Councillor Walter. Any further questions? No further questions. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Ms Tyson. We have a recommendation on the screen. Councillors, do we have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Walter moving, Councillor Dazon seconding. Any councillors speaking against? None against. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Walter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Through you, Mayor, yes, I would. As the ward councillor and having had extensive relationships with schools and kindergartens in my ward, I fully welcome another kinder because we are growing very rapidly and need all the space we can get for all the kids that are coming and being born. If you'll recall, we have 100 babies born in Casey every week. So any new kinder is welcome news. This is very well placed in between Springleaf Recreation Reserve and the new Turn Primary School. So perfect place to put it. I have seen some of the design mock-ups and materials used, and it will be a very attractive and energy efficient place. And I am very excited to see it.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Councillor Dazon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Through you, Mayor. It is fantastic to see another family and community centre to be built in Southern Casey. And as mentioned by Councillor Walter, we are rapidly growing down in Clyde and Clyde North. Family and community centres are very important. They provide spaces for families and community connection. We've already seen a few new centres in my ward, and it's great to see this growth continuing. I would also like to note that I have reviewed the confidential attachment and don't see any issues with it. So I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dazon. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Ross.
I wanted to note that I've also reviewed the report of the tender process, which indicates that due process was followed to arrive at this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any further speakers? No further speakers. We'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. Please keep them raised, noting Councillor Dowling's absence. Councillor Dazon, Councillor Pereira, Councillor Eves, Councillor Crowther, Councillor Cooman, Councillor Walter, Councillor Perry, Councillor Ambrose, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Ross. Thank you, councillors. Noting Councillor Dowling absent from the vote. I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move to, thank you, Ms Tyson. We will now move to item 4.11, which is contract extension of CT 000808A, tree supply, planting and maintenance. And I think we'll also be introducing 4.12, contract extension of CT 000808B, supply planting and establishment of trees. They're introduced together, noting the similarities and the nature of the contracts. And to introduce these two reports, we have Miss Nicole Young. Miss Young.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight I am here to present the two reports to seek Council's endorsement to extend contract CT 000808A and 808B for a period of 3 years. These two contracts deliver similar services that include sourcing and ordering of tree stock, purchasing trees for specific species from advanced nurseries, planting and maintenance of trees on council land, and compliance with relevant codes. Both these contracts commenced in June 2023 for an initial term of 3 years. In line with Greening Casey, a 10-year planting program has been developed and implemented, using data-driven, multi-criteria approach to ensure high-impact tree planting throughout the City of Casey. Planting opportunities have been identified and included in the report for locations such as vacant nature strips, walking and cycling paths, street and roads and surrounds, public gardens, council-owned car parks, wide road reserves and activity centres. In addition, this contract allows council to plant infill trees or to replace trees that were removed due to ill health. This is a cost-efficient way to deliver the services in a consistent manner, with the contracts also being able to provide data on tree plantings back to the City of Casey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Young. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Perry?
Just how will this be impacted when we look at our, someone help me with the word, but our acquisition process later in the year? A procurement process later in the year. Can this be impacted at all?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Perry, through the Chair. As this is an existing contract, the mechanism will continue as we are seeking an extension for the 3-year term. Council does have an opportunity to review the procurement policy later in 2026, and that would then apply to any future contracts for a service similar to this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms Young. Just on that, in terms of procurement, obviously there's confidential contracts, but in terms from the public, can you explain the process for determining value for money in executing such an extension?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. As part of the initial tender process back in 2023, officers undertook a rigorous process that evaluated both cost of delivering service as well as quality, safety systems and experience in the area. Based on the value that was applied there and the mechanism in the contract to apply CPI annually, we are currently in a position where we would be paying a higher level of service per tree planted if we were to tender the service again in the current market value compared to the lot values that we locked in back in 2023.
Thank you, Ms Young. Councillors, any further questions? No further questions. So on that, we will have to pass or put these to a vote separately, noting their similarities, but they are separate reports. So for item 4.11, we have a motion on the screen, which is in relation to contract extension CT 000808A. Do we have a mover and seconder for the motion? Councillor Perry moving, Councillor Rowe seconding. Any councillors speaking against? None against. Councillor Perry, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yep, through you, Mayor. I think this is important as it shows investment in trees within Casey. One of the first meetings I had with a resident, he showed me a satellite image of Casey and then compared it with the inner eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and amazingly, Casey looked relatively barren in comparison. So, yeah, if you want to identify a barren piece of land in your community that could be planted out, I guess you can contact your ward councillor now. I think there's an example in my ward that the Mayor pointed out to me today is that same conversation. The guys wanted to plan out Kendall Road Reserve, on top of the playground development there, and it looks like parts of that will be planted out. So, yeah, I guess you can get it on the list if you contact your councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, it's another example of how our officers work well with the people who are doing the hard work, out building the roads and also making the paths for our children to run on and play on, and we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't get that unless we had officers who are able to manipulate a few, well, not probably manipulate's a bit strong, but to work a good card game with the various workers on the site. So sites, plural.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No further speakers? I will speak. I think it's kind of a given that we need to extend this contract, given how much we are increasing our tree planting. It's good that we're getting value for money. I think I hear from residents, they see the trees being planted, and I think we see it when we drive around, and I see what I presume are these contractors going and assessing trees that might go missing and need to get replanted under the contract. So good to see, so I'm supporting this motion. On that, we'll now put this to a vote. All those councillors in favour of the motion on the screen, please raise your hand. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Walter, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. As noted, 4.12, which has been introduced, it's a similar contract, or similar basis, so we will now need to consider this recommendation, which is contract extension of CT 00808B, supply planting and establishment of trees. Recommendation is on the screen. Councillors, do we have a mover and seconder for the report? Councillor Ross moving. Councillor Dowling seconding. Any councillors speaking against? None against. Councillor Ross, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would love to speak to the motion, thank you, Mayor. Given this optional extension is in place and that other options have been considered, I support this recommendation. An increase reflects the increase in tree planting requested by councillors. I was concerned at first that acceptance of this extension would make it difficult to argue for an even greater increase in tree planting. However, I was assured by officers that increasing tree planting, even by a significant amount, would be possible under the contract. This is important because we are playing catch up with our tree canopy, and there is a significant amount of work to do quickly. The significance of this is outlined in the Greening Casey report, which was endorsed in August 2024, where it stated that Council had no significant tree planting programs in open space until 2019, which is a bit mind-boggling. In 2018, our tree canopy cover was low at 11.3% compared to local government average of 19.2%. The Greening Casey target for across Casey is 15% by 2030, which is still short of the average. Benefits that trees bring, I think we still find it hard to get our head around the actual economic benefit that trees bring, as well as the climate benefit. The City of New York found that for every dollar spent on their trees, they would return $5.60 in environment, social and economic benefits, carbon storage and sequestration, energy-saving benefits of nearby buildings and stormwater interception, and that was from a 2022 study. A study of 97 trees in Pioneer Park showed that they are worth almost $500,000. And then at the time of the Greening Casey report, the 300,000 public tree population in Casey was worth around $1.5 billion. So when we look at the contract extension and the amount of money it's going to cost, it really needs to be put into context of what those trees will give back. Greening Casey also identified over 10,000 vacant tree sites, 302 kilometres of linear walking and cycling paths are mapped to the City of Casey, and 71 kilometres of those paths intersected with identified priority areas, which were only currently covered by 5.3% tree canopy cover. Our activity centres are some of the highest areas in our municipality. So yes, I support this extension, and may it be many more trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Dowling, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, through you, Mayor. The average person actually uses 8 fully grown trees a year in oxygen. So if you're going on that, 430,000 people here, we need 3,360,000 trees. That's just to cover the people that live in this environment. So it's important to look at what the trees actually do. Deciduous trees don't give much off when they lose their leaves, and native Australia didn't have deciduous trees. They had a couple, but not the majority. The majority of deciduous trees were introduced. I'd like to see a lot more green, a lot more trees planted that are evergreens. I understand we need to let light through in parks and that sort of thing during darker days in winter, but I do think the canopy is more important to give us oxygen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. Any further councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dazon.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. That was very enlightening. Through you, Mayor. Just very quickly want to mention that I've reviewed the confidential attachment and don't see any issues with it. And just also very quickly, just for everyone's information, I've been asked by a few residents on what happens when trees die and whether ratepayers bear the cost of replacing the trees. And we've been informed by officers that the contractors are actually responsible to replace the dying trees. So it's good to know that ratepayers' money are not expended on tree replacement. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dazon. Any further speakers? No further speakers? All right, councillors, we will put this to a vote. Motion is on the screen. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. That's passed unanimously. Thank you, Ms Young. And on that brings an end to our reports, our officer reports at item 4. So we will move to item 5, consideration of reports of committees. I've got no noted committee reports, particularly given it's the start of the year. So with no speakers on that, we will now move to item 6, which is a regular on our agenda as a result of our changes to delegations. So this is a list of decisions made over $1 million under the S5 instrument of delegation. Obviously, we've passed previously in items larger contracts, but this is a listing for transparency of any contracts decided under delegation. And that includes the Edwin Flack Reserve upgrade to Athletics Pavilion, Pearcedale Recreation Reserve skate and playground park redevelopment, and the supply and delivery of horticultural chemicals. Any councillors like to make comment on any of those items? Councillor Dowling.
Yes, the Little Athletics track redevelopment or the installation of a stand with seating has been long needed, and congratulations to everyone that was involved in getting that through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowling. I have been down there with you. It's going to be a fantastic addition and very hard fought by the community. Any further comments on this item? No further comments. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move to item 7, which is petitions, and we have one petition received for this evening's council meeting. We received a petition for a free water play area for Casey Fields. Petition was prepared by Lally Gombulars and received 45 signatures. Do I have a councillor to table the petition for a free water play area for Casey Fields? Councillor Crowther, Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to the petition? Thank you, Councillor Crowther.
I thank Lally and all the signatories for their petition for a free water play area at Casey Fields. I spoke with Lally over summer about this idea because she was looking for low-cost ways to entertain her grandchildren and felt a water play area at Casey Fields would be a great way for kids to cool off. So I recommend that this petition be referred to the Chief Executive Officer to respond to, the head petitioner, and provide a response to the matters raised in the petition.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. That petition has been tabled and will be responded to accordingly. Move now to item 8, notice of motion. There are no notice of motion items for this council meeting. Ditto for item 9, late reports. There have been no late reports for this council meeting. And we have also already completed our public questions, which we brought forward to the start of the meeting. So on that note, we will now look to item 11, urgent business. There were no urgent business items received ahead of this council meeting. Also, item 12, no closed council reports for this council meeting. So on that note, item 13, I declare the council meeting closed and thank members of the public for joining us and staying through for this evening's proceedings, and also to those who've joined us online. Thank you to councillors, officers and all the staff who've made this evening possible. Have a lovely evening. Thank you.